it's Karen Burniston here with a card making with dies video tutorial with a Christmas theme. It's a bottom fold card. It has a magnetic closure, and when you open it, the Christmas tree that you saw through the window on the front of the card becomes a pop-up Christmas tree inside. So this video is part of day 5 of this week's Save the Crafty YouTuber video hop. We are one of the sponsors of the hop, and there are some fantastic sponsors who have donated some amazing prizes. If it is prior to November 7th, 2018, you can leave a comment and be in on those prizes. Here on this video, you could be one of 2 lucky winners to win all 3 of the dies that I used in the project. I'm going to start with a piece of cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 11, and I'm going to score that in 3 locations. Measuring off the left side 4 3/4, then measuring off that first line 5 more inches, then another 3/4 of an inch. Then I'll fold on all 3 of those lines, and I love just using a bone folder to make sure I get a nice crisp fold. And then I'll just unfold everything. And I'll start by doing some decoration inside my card using the Squares Crosshatch die set. In these shape sets, they alternate crosshatch and then decorative score. So on the decorative score ones, that's a nice big open die. You can definitely cut through 2 layers at once. So I'm going to cut through 2 layers of this wood grain paper I found in my stash. You can use any die cutting machine that can accommodate a wafer thin die, and today I am using a Sizzix Big Shot. Okay, so then I have those 2 squares, and then with the largest square, I'm going to cut both the same wood grain paper with that crosshatch square and then also this piece of the red patterned paper. Now I'll take that big crosshatch square and put it in my trimmer, and I want to cut off 3/4 of an inch. So now I'm going to put the square back together again, but up next to the fold in the card. So I have the 3/4 inch piece at the bottom of the fold, and then the larger piece of the square above the fold, and I want to leave that little bit of gap at the fold so that it will not bunch. And then so I can keep those pieces together while I die cut the tabs, I'll use some temporary removable tape just to hold them to each other, keeping that gap between them. Okay, just using my tape runner, I'm going to add the wood grain paper squares inside the card. So one's going to go on the lower panel, and I'm pretty much just centering it. And then the upper one will actually be partially covered by the red paper later, so I think I'll just cut some of that off to keep the bulk down inside the card. And I'm just going to line the upper edge with the first fold up at the top, and then just try and get the sides pretty even with the other square. The largest wood grain crosshatch square will go on the front of the card. I'll just use a tape runner for that, but when I add my tape runner, I'm going to avoid the top edge just a bit so that I can slide something underneath that later. Time to switch to the Christmas Trees Pop Stand die set. There are 12 pieces in the set, and I'll start first with the one that cuts the pop-up tabs that animate the Christmas tree. So for this die, I'm going to center it over the top of my red pattern paper, making sure the alignment nubs are right over the gap, since that represents the fold of my card. Now I'll just roll that right through my die cutting machine. What that die does is cut tabs on either side of the fold, and those tabs are perfectly sized and spaced to animate the Christmas tree. Now I'm going to attach the large part of the square inside the card. So I'll use my tape runner for that. I'm just going to avoid the tab with adhesive. And I don't want any adhesive on the small flap yet, so I'm only doing the large part of the square, lining that right up with the fold again and getting it put in there permanently. You can see my small flap will still raise up, as will my tabs. No adhesive under any of those. Time to cut the 5 parts of the pop-up Christmas tree. For the big slotted tree, I'm using a piece of glitter paper. And then for the other 4 trees, I found a piece of white, kind of pearlescent cardstock. I can die cut all 5 trees at one time. For the big slotted tree, I need to make sure that the slot comes out. And then for the 2 big tree frames, you do have the option to use the stencil feature. So it's going to cut 2 pieces at one time, a solid tree that we're not using, and then the tree frame. And if you'd like to add those stitch marks to the tree frame, you just put the paper back in the die, and then you can use a pen or you could sponge some ink through it to add those stitch lines. I am going to use a liquid silver pen today. So obviously that's optional, but if you like the look of those stitched lines, you can use the die as a stencil. And I'll just leave my other tree frame plain since it's in the back and you won't see it. Okay, let's hook these two small trees together. And the way we do that is for the one that has only notches, you're going to fold down a triangle at the top. Then you're going to get the notch at the bottom of that tree through the slot on the other tree, and then you'll be able to weave the top of the tree through. Now, normally on the back you would unfold it, but let's just leave it folded down for now because I want to show something on the back of these trees. So you have the one tree that has the folded down triangle. The other side is actually the other tree, and it has a much smaller triangle to fold down at the back, just that little one up at the top. But after you have both of those little triangles folded down, one on one tree, one on the other, then you can pinch those two trees together like this. And essentially the two folded down triangles represents the back of the tree. So now you can put both trees through the slot on the glittered tree, making sure the notch gets seated in the bottom, in the slot at the bottom. Then now, since both triangles are folded down, you'll be able to get both triangles through the back of the tree. And now on the back of the big glittered tree, open them back up again and unfold the triangles. And remember, you are in control of YouTube videos, so you can slide that slider back and rewatch that part until you get it. And you can always watch the assembly video for the dies themselves, because I always go over the assembly in great detail in those videos. Okay, I think what would look lovely on this tree would be these white glittery enamel dots, and so I'm just going to put those randomly on those two little trees, just making sure I don't cross the seam in the middle so that the trees can still free flow. Okay, for attaching the tree frames to the tabs, I am a fan of using liquid glue. I've got my LINECO neutral pH adhesive in my fine tip bottle, and we do sell both of those items on our website. And then I'm just going to add some glue to the top of that tab, the one in the back where the big square is. And then to that, I'm going to attach the large tree frame, the one that does not have any silver stitch lines on it. So this one's for the back of the tree. So once that glue sets up, you've got the back tree on, you can see it'll raise right up. Now, normally you'd add the front tree, but we're doing a special kind of card here. We want to cut a window into the front of the card, and the die I will use for that is my slotted tree. Okay, remember our little short part of the square in the other tab is not attached permanently, so I'm actually going to remove it. That'll get it out of the way while I'm doing the window cutting. Don't lose it though, because it's important. I have my temporary removable tape up behind the die so that the blade is up, the sticky side of the tape is up, and I want to line up that die now directly over the top of my tree that's already installed in my card. Then I hold that die in place and I close the card and give it a press where some of the tape is. It's going to move the die to the other side in exactly the right position. Now when I roll this through my machine, I want to stop my cutting pad just past the die itself. And that way I don't have to roll through the other parts of my card where my pop-up is already partially installed. So as soon as I clear the die, I'm going to roll back through again. You may even want to go a third time since there is 3 layers of paper to get through. Mine just made it. I just had one little area where it didn't quite get through, and I just fixed that with my scissors. Okay, let me turn this around to the camera and show you what we've got now. A bottom fold card with a window in the front that lines up perfectly with the pop-up when it's closed. Okay, we need that other tab to make the pop-up work. So I'm going to remove that temporary tape, fold up my tab so it's up and out of the way. And then for placement, I'm actually going to do this in the closed position, which means I fold it over and face down onto the other side. I can just line up the tab holes to make sure that I have the proper placement. And then just with my tape runner everywhere except for the little hole, and then just carefully close the card against that exposed adhesive. Okay, so now I have the other tab ready for the front tree. Exactly as with the back tree, I just want the adhesive on the top of the tab. This time I want to make sure my silver stitch lines are face down because I want to see those on the front of the card, and then just attach that tab to the back of the tree. Okay, just a quick check to see how it's all going to look, and it lines up perfectly. There is a die in the set that will cut 2 matching little trunks, and those can be used to cover up the tabs on the inside of the pop-up so that you don't see them. So it's just easier to add those trunk pieces inside the tree before you finish out the assembly. And you can always add them to the outside of the tree later. Okay, to finish out the assembly, you just need a little bit of a strong adhesive up at the top of a tree frame. So just right up at the top, and then you attach the expanding tree to it. And I just like to center that so you can see there's just a smidge little shadow around the whole piece. Then you add that same dot of glue to the top of the other tree frame, bring them up to each other, and then line them up and press them. So that center glitter tree, all the whole expanding parts, they just hang right in the middle of the other two trees. So they're only attached up at the top. And then as you close the card, those trees in the middle will hit the back of the card, and then they'll flatten. And then when you open it, they'll expand. And then on the front of the card, I can add one of those standalone tree trunks to complete it. Now I'll work on that magnetic closure, and I'll start by adding a strong tacky tape in the outermost panel of my card. And since I have thin tacky tape, I'm using 2 strips, but if you had wider tape, you could just use 1. And then right in the center at the first fold, I'm going to pierce a hole and then weave in a little loop of twine. And I just need to see how much of that loop I want to show on the front of the card, so I can kind of test it out, close the card up, make sure that I've got a nice loop that will help people open the card, but not so long that it gets down into my tree too far. And then once I have a loop that I like, I can go in and trim away the excess tails. I just need a little bit inside to stick to the tape. I buy my magnets from K&J Magnetics, and I will put a source in the supply list in the About section. But I'm stacking up 2 very small magnets right in the center and very close to the fold. And then I'll bring my twine ends to either side of the magnet and stick those down into the tape as well. And then I just need to peel up the liner on my tape and fold over that flap. Now to make sure that I place the other magnet in the right spot, I just let it sit on the magnets that are hidden. And then what I'll do is I'll just add a strong piece of tape to the other side and then close it and let it grab that magnet for me. And then remember how I didn't fully glue down the top edge of that square. That way I can slide in a piece of paper now to cover up my other magnet, add a little bit of contrast to the top of the card. Inside the card, I've decided to use our Big Script Merry Christmas die. I've cut it out of both the pearlescent white and a dark brown, and then I'll glue those to each other and offset them just a smidge to give that little shadow. And then that will go inside my card along with a couple of the nested squares to make a frame. And I also use the 2 smallest squares in the set to add a place to sign the card. And then I've got the Merry Christmas in the back, a twine bow up at the top of the tree. And then now all I need to do is a little bit more decoration on the front of the card. And included in the Christmas Trees Pop Stand set are 2 identical little beaded garland pieces. And if you glue them together by either overlapping 1 bead or 2 beads, you kind of get a different angle to your garlands. So it sort of depends on how many you overlap as to how swoopy the garlands end up becoming. And then I just added them to the front of the card with some of those leftover enamel dots and another strip of the red paper along the bottom just to anchor the tree. My finished card measures 4 1/4 by 5 when closed, and it will mail easily in an A2 envelope. You will find a link to the next stop on the hop in the About section below this video. I definitely invite you to leave a comment to be in on the prize drawing and keep on hopping. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com, where you'll find more information about purchasing these dies, as well as links to all my other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel, and as promised, I've linked those 2 videos right here on the end screen. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.